afn.net/events, or you can call 800-326-4543 and just punch in extension 205. So once again, you can register at afa.net/events or call 800-326-4543 and extension 205. That's coming up Thursday, April 20th, not too far away. Well, as usual, on this segment, on our Friday edition of At the Core, we invite stellar news guy Chris Woodward into the studio, kind of give us a little wrap on the major things going on across the country during the week, and he joins us in studio right now.
Thank you very much.
Afternoon, Chris. Well, listen, I find this news exciting because there's a fight back going on against that left-wing agenda. We've been talking about that during the early part of the program today. And in various states across the country, and I think it's pretty well exclusively Republican states, where action is being taken to put a halt to the horrible things being done in the way of what the left calls it
gender-affirming care.
Gender-affirming care for transgenders. I call it gender manipulation. Some people call it transgender mutilation surgeries and other procedures that are being done. But there are various states that are taking action to put a halt to this.
Yeah, Georgia being one of them. Governor Kemp signed a legislation into a law yesterday, and that law, like Mississippi or South Dakota or some other states out there, it bans gender manipulation of minors. So people 17 and younger cannot get medicines to help them so-called transition to another gender. They can't get surgical procedures done. And the reason for those kinds of laws, supporters say that, look, we don't let you drive a car, we don't let you get a tattoo, we don't let you enter into a contract and make all kinds of decisions at young ages. Therefore, you shouldn't be able to get these kinds of things done to you at such a young age. There's a lot of concern out there that these things are not safe, that people who go through them, some of them go on to regret them and then try to get them reversed, if that's even possible. Chloe Cole is one person out there who went through procedures years ago, and now she has changed her mind. She's gone back to being a woman, and she's going around the country speaking in places like Georgia, saying this is not right. Please do what you can to protect kids that are wanting to get through this, because supporters would tell you this as well. Hospitals and medical providers may be interested in doing these things based on the amount of money they can bring in to do it. So Governor Kemp signed a bill into law yesterday and outlawed that in Georgia. Missouri may be the next state that moves in this direction, and I say that because yesterday the Missouri Senate passed a bill that now heads to the GOP-led House for consideration that does pretty much the same thing. No medicines, no surgeries for individuals 17 and younger to alter their gender. And of course, as we have reported on our website, afn.net, the Missouri Attorney General in recent days took steps to issue an emergency regulation that pretty much makes it difficult to get this done in Missouri while the legislature sorts this all out.
Yeah, well, they're also taking steps to protect girls' sports, female sports, from a guy who simply says, gee, I feel like a girl and I want to play on the girls' teams.
Right.
And the concern... Here's what is absolutely amazing to me. The left-wing feminist groups have been almost silent on this. This affects young ladies, girls, high school girls, basketball teams, whatever the soccer teams. It affects, female sports for Olympic sports, all of these kinds of things. And yet the left-wingers who normally would be out there marching for female rights are silent on this.
Yeah, it shows you, and Walker and I have talked about this on the program, today's Democrats are not your daddy's Democrats. There was a time 50 years ago where Democrats fought hard and were successful in getting Title IX to ensure that girls had places to use the restroom, had shower spaces, had their own sporting events and teams and things of that sort to make it fair for them to have, a level of competition that might help them get to college or something like that. Flash forward 50 years, and now you've got members of the same party saying Billy should be in the same contest as Susie, and you just need to get over it. But law firms like Alliance Defending Freedom say this is a violation of a woman's Title IX rights, and they are in court right now in the Second Circuit, which is in the northeastern section of the country, arguing on behalf of some female track athletes that say, I lost competitions to men and I lost opportunities, including scholarship opportunities, because I had to compete against a guy and he beat me, and because I finished second, third, fourth, fifth, what have you, I didn't get the scholarship opportunities that I should have been able to get through Title IX. So they're in court over that.
This should be a bipartisan effort. I would think if Democrats were smart, they would be fighting for girls.
Yes. The one feminist group that I can think of that's actually sided with groups like ours and Family Research Council, Family Policy Alliance, is an organization called Women's Liberation Front or something of that sort. WOLF is what they go by. And they are unashamedly a radical feminist group, but they say this is not right. Women should not have to compete against men, and lawmakers need to protect women, but unfortunately not enough lawmakers out there nationally are interested in protecting women's Title IX rights.
Well, the radical left has many agendas. Among them is also climate change. What's new on that front?
Yes. This week, the UN put out another warning saying essentially what we've heard for many years now, that we're running out of time, and unless we drastically change our way of life, we're going to warm to the point where we're going to run short of food, the polar ice caps are going to melt, and horrible, bad, no good, very bad stuff is going to happen. So usual stuff. I've been here 13 years. I've covered this the entire 13 years, and pretty much it's the same stuff every year. But nonetheless, the UN continues to put it out there. For a story that we had this week on AFN.net, I spoke with a guy named Steve Malloy of junkscience.com, and he said, look, at the data I have, I'm seeing we're actually in a period of cooling, or we've had cooling in recent years, so I'm not seeing the warming that they're warning people about. And Steve is one of those folks that's of the opinion this is more or less about control. They want to do away with big oil and big industries that make a lot of money and kind of control the way we live and operate, all so they can get their own stuff in there, like windmills or solar panels. Steve actually said, unfortunately, a lot of conservative news outlets have just kind of even stopped bringing them on to give the other side. They do the story as whatever the UN says and go about their day without quoting or including Steve or Mark Morano or somebody out there. That is the difference between news outlets and ours. We'll tell you what the UN says, but I'm going to have the comment from the skeptics saying you need to know this too, people. So check that article out on AFN.net.
Under the heading of climate change / you got to be kidding me, is a story out of Colorado.
Yes.
Where is it a city councilor? Is it Louisville?
It's Louisville, Colorado, which, as I understand it, is in the Boulder area.
Okay.
And they want to ban the construction of new gas stations as part of an effort to fight climate change. A Fox story this week on this mentioned there's about 21,000 people there in this area, and they have 6 gas stations. And as part of an effort to combat climate change, the city council is talking about banning the construction of new gas stations. It's a crazy idea, but as one guy from the Boulder County GOP pointed out, look, if we allow them to go this direction, what's to stop them from saying, okay, no more meat in the grocery store. You can only have plant-based stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You can't drive this kind of car. You can't have gasoline at all. And the crazy thing about it is that city councilor that was in favor of that, and the other city councilors that are even talking about it, they all got to that city council meeting somehow. They drove cars. They had lights ablaze. And for some reason they think not building something that doesn't even exist and maybe people aren't even considering is going to help combat climate change.
Yeah. I sometimes wonder when I hear these crazy ideas coming from these politicians, I want to ask how many marijuana stores they have in the area. Mm-hmm. Because I think they've been smoking too much.
Yes. They're living on the high times there in Colorado. Rocky Mountain High.
Rocky Mountain High. You just don't understand it. You say, come on, 21,000 people in this little community. What they're going to do is just gas up before they go home at night. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
It really doesn't. And I think the Boulder County guy made a good point. You kind of roll your eyes and you think, well, it's not that big a deal, whatever. Everything you allow the government to do, sets a precedent for a future government to say, well, we did it back in 23 with gas stations, so we should say no more meat in the grocery store this week.
Yeah. I guess you call it a Rocky Mountain High sometimes.
Yes. I mean, it's when I saw that, it almost sounded like a Babylon Bee article, like a headline, like City Council wants to do away with new gas stations or something like that. But in this case, it's an actual story. Look it up.
All right. Interest rates. I understand there was a quarter-point interest rate this week increase.
Yes, and some people were hoping that wouldn't happen based on the concerns with the banking situation. Of course, you had a lot of banks kind of go belly up in recent days. You had situations in here in the U.S. You had banks in Europe that were having difficulty. There was one report out that found somewhere in the neighborhood of like 100 and something banks were in trouble of collapse. So a lot of people were hoping that the Fed would not raise interest rates. But according to the Associated Press, Fed officials say inflation is actually hotter today than they thought it would be at this point. So therefore, they're trying to fight that inflation by raising the interest rate up again by another quarter point. And you think, well, 5%, that's not that big. It's certainly not as bad as it was in years past. In my lifetime, we've seen far worse interest rates. But at a time when you still have an economy trying to recover from COVID and supply chain problems and whatnot, all of a sudden you're not going to be able to buy a house for as cheap as you wanted. You won't be able to get something on a credit card, maybe an auto loan, stuff like that. And all those things end up impacting the economy and the people that are in service sectors that do things for those homes or cars or whatever it may be. So every time they raise it up, there's going to be a negative. And unfortunately, the Fed did say we're probably going to have another rate hike later this year.
Yeah, well, they have to do something. They're trying to, the Fed right now, trying to do something to dampen inflation. Mm-hmm. And normally what you do is raise interest rates, and so people stop borrowing money and stop putting money into the economy. That's the reason there. But of course, we had the bank failures in the last 10 days or so, and that has raised the anxiety level even higher.
Yeah, and keep in mind, too, that part of the reason why we have the inflation, maybe even a lot of the reason why we have the inflation that we've experienced in the last year or two is because of the government. Yeah. Just printing a bunch of money to come in and rescue everybody from the situation that the government put them in by shutting the economy down. So the same government that tried to fix it by printing and giving out a whole bunch of money is now part of a system that's trying to raise interest rates to make it less of a problem that they themselves played a role in creating.
Well, there was at least one good news story this week, and this involves Coach Kennedy, the football coach from Bremerton, Washington.
Yes, speaking of money, Coach Kennedy, who was the coach who was fired many years ago for taking a knee in silent prayer after games, sometimes by himself, sometimes with coaches and players who were not expected to pray with him or told to pray alongside the same way he does and all that stuff. He ended up getting reinstated following his Supreme Court victory, and as part of that situation, Bremerton High School there in Washington State is now going to give him a near $2 million settlement. Most of that is going to go toward his legal expenses, because this was a case that went on for about 8 years. I hadn't been here very long when this kind of started, and it went up and down and in and out of court. First Liberty Institute represented him and finally got him to the Supreme Court, where last year they got a ruling in his favor, and as part of that ruling in his favor, the school has to pay near $2 million. They're going to do it in installments. But Jeremy Dice of First Liberty told me on AFN.net, none of this would have happened had they just recognized his right to pray in the first place.
How about that?
Yes.
There are still constitutional rights, and I'm glad that school district has had to pay for that persecution of that coach. I'd like to see a whole lot more of that. Chris, thank you so much for being with us, as always, and we hope, folks, that you have enjoyed today's program and that you will have a great weekend and be out there and get a blessing from your church, but also be a blessing as you go forward. Great to be with you. We'll see you again real soon.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or
90.5 KTXG Greenville, Dallas.
Dr. Travis was a man that was full of life.
Bert Harper of Exploring the Word.
He loved the Word of God, and it came across in the classroom. Dr. Travis put in my heart a desire to know God through His Word. And that's what we're trying to do on Exploring the Word.
Exploring the Word, weekday afternoons at 3 Central on American Family Radio. This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Robert Thornton. The Pentagon said a suspected Iranian-made drone killed an American contractor and wounded multiple U.S. service members in Syria. Fox's Jennifer Griffin reports.
Iran proxy forces launched 7 rockets at another U.S. base in northeast Syria. U.S. defense official tells Fox there are no U.S. casualties and no damage to that base. A U.S. contractor was killed by an Iranian drone strike in northeast Syria on Thursday. 5 U.S. service members and 1 additional U.S. contractor were wounded in the attack. This is one of the first times that I can remember the Pentagon putting out a statement blaming Iran for killing a U.S. citizen and targeting U.S. service members. President Biden directed Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin to launch precision airstrikes in eastern Syria against facilities used by Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps.
An activist group reportedly claims that at least 4 members of the Iran-backed militia were killed by the U.S. retaliatory strike. House Republicans made good on a campaign promise to pass a Parents' Bill of Rights and give parents more say in their children's education. Fox's Jeff Manasso reports.
The vote 213 to 208 as the House passes the Parents' Bill of Rights that would give parents the right to know what's being taught in schools, to see reading materials, and to be updated on any school violence.
Today was a win for every mother, every father, but most importantly, for every student in America.
Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, opponents say the bill does nothing to help schools, kids, or parents. It now goes to the Democratic-controlled Senate, where Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has promised the Parents' Bill of Rights faces a dead end. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
Children and teens in Utah will lose access to social media apps if they don't have parental consent and face other restrictions under a first-in-the-nation law designed to shield young people from the addictive platforms. 2 laws signed by Republican Governor Spencer Cox yesterday prohibit children under 18 from using social media between the hours of 10:30 p.m. and 6:30 a.m., require age verification for anyone who wants to use social media in the state, and it opens the door to lawsuits on behalf of children claiming social media harm them. Visit afn.net for more. An immigration enforcement law firm is filing suit on behalf of Washington, D.C. residents who don't want their vote diluted by non-citizens. Here's AFN's Chad Groening.
The day the District of Columbia's new voting law went into effect, the Immigration Reform Law Institute filed suit on behalf of Stacia Hall, the Republican candidate for D.C. mayor in 2022, and 6 other U.S. citizen D.C. voters to strike down the law. Ira Mellon is the media director for the IRLI, which is affiliated with the Federation for American Immigration Reform. He says this backlash follows the Washington, D.C. City Council passing a law that allows non-citizens to vote in municipal elections in the city.
That includes illegal aliens. It also includes personnel at foreign embassies. Under this law, people working for the Chinese embassy can vote in local elections. It is so absurd, it's hard to believe that any legislative body would do that. And this works to the detriment of legitimate citizens and voters in Washington, D.C., who are having their vote diluted. And it is certainly grounds for a lawsuit.
And Mellon says we've seen in many places in the country just consistent chipping away at the value of citizenship.
What is the value of citizenship if anybody who walks into the country, settles in the nation's capital, and lives there for more than 30 days, has an equal voice with everybody else? At some point you have to question, what is the value of American citizenship if it doesn't make you any different from anybody who just happens to wander in?
Mellon says if laws like this are not struck down, next there will be calls in many states to allow aliens to vote in statewide and even federal elections. He says one can only hope that the court will protect our American democracy by striking down this unconstitutional law. I'm Chad Groening.
The Storm Prediction Center has outlined an area for the best chance of severe weather today and tonight, and that's the lower Mississippi Valley and Mid-South. Some strong tornadoes are also possible. The threat diminishes as the system heads into the southeast on Saturday. And that is a wrap on news this hour. Thank you for listening. Visit afn.net for more. For American Family News, I'm Robert Thornton.
Forget about Facebook.
The last 10 days we've been banned twice, and is unbanning a word?
They put us under the ban. Christians and conservatives don't need your YouTube.
Banned one day, banned again.
AFR programs are now live streaming on the AFA streaming app. Now you can get shows like Today's Issues straight from the source.
Put it back on the next.
Just say unbanned.
Unbanned.
Just search AFA streaming or visit streaming.afa.net to sign up.
This is a re-air of Airing the Addisons. You know, as Christians, we have to understand and be real with where we are.
That's what we have to see first, individually.
And where our mindset is and what we desire.
Airing the Addisons.
I think what God is really calling us back to, it's those individual personal revivals in our own lives where we're like, oh Lord, what have we done? We have minimized you.
Promoting truth, wisdom, and empowerment.
As the church, man, we should be on the forefront of making disciples, of indoctrination and godly things.
If we don't train our kids, they will not be able to stand.
Airing the Addisons.
On American Family Radio, thank you so much for listening. I'm Miki.
And I'm Will.
And Sweet Victory and J-Mac are on tap to help us navigate the show. We are looking forward to today's discussion. We are going to talk about the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship. Why are you laughing?
I'm like, why am I here?
Well, if you were not here, there would not be this conversation. Let's just say that, shall we? There has to be a you of sorts in everyone's picture for there to be a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law type dynamic and relationship, which I think is one of those relationships that when we start to talk about them, there's a lot of humor in it. But there's also a lot of like angst. You know, there's a lot of there's you. Oh, come on. There's humor, and there's like some pain sometimes. You know, and people don't like to talk about that because it's one of those things. I feel like the mother-in-law relationship falls into the category of the marriage. Okay, and let me tell you what I mean when I say that. You either really want to talk about this and you really want to get to a place where there's true health and true, you know, the glorification of God. Like you really want that. You want God to be glorified. Or you just want to fake your way through it and pretend that you understand it all and you got it all together, and you say things like, and remember, I'm comparing the mother-in-law relationship to like marriage, okay? So you want to fake your way through it and you say things like, oh, we never argue.
Right.
Okay, in both relationships, right? And everyone, like, people, so, you know, just when we hear that, I just want you to know, like, and now, because we travel all over this country, so I'm going to say this, and someone this year, I'm telling you, someone this year is going to walk up to me after what I'm about to say and say, hey, you know, you said on the show, if someone were to say, well, I'm the someone, and I'm going to tell you right now, here's what I'm going to say. Oh, that's great. That's what I'm going to say. But here's my statement, though.
What's your statement?
When people say to me, oh, we never argue, I'm like, okay, so like define, do you mean that you don't like fuss? Like, is that what you mean? Because yes, you can say, you can argue, you can disagree without fussing, and
there
like,
are disagreements.
You know, but there are disagreements. And so when I hear people say things like that, I'm just like, really? You know what I mean? Like, that's how I feel. Like, really.
So I think that they may be saying that they don't have, they don't fuss, like they don't raise up.
Yeah,
but they do have disagreements. Right. I think that's what they're trying to say. I
wish people would say that. I wish people would say that we disagree for the glory of God, or that we have disagreements, or that when we argue, and I think there's a different understanding. Also, there's like levels to understanding the art of argument, right? Like what it is to have an opinion and to have a back and forth with that. But to do that in a dignified way, like to not, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not coming to blows. Like, we're not coming to fisticuffs. You know what I'm saying? Right. Because Will wouldn't stand a chance. So, I just, why are you laughing? You laugh at the wrong time. You laugh when the things like that is a fact.
Hilarious.
That is a fact. okay? Like, please do not let people be fooled by the fakeness of your muscular build. Like this, look, people already know. They understand because I'm the one who talks the most. I'm also stronger physically. They know it. Don't you guys know it? And everybody's shaking their head. They're like, we know it. We knew she was stronger because she talks the most or more. Anyway,
But look, I can't wait to see you as a mother-in-law.
I'll be a great one. I will be a great one.
I can't wait to see it.
It's going to be really difficult for my daughter-in-law. I just will say that.
That's what I know. The sons.
But you know,
yeah.
But I will pray a lot because here's the thing. So we're going to have two guests on with us in the next segment. Barbara Rioch and Stacy Rioch. So Barbara is the mother-in-law. Stacy is the daughter-in-law, and they have co-authored a book together, Making Room for Her. Which I love the title of because it goes in both directions. It's, you know, you talk to the daughter-in-law and what is she doing? She's making room for her. And you talk to the mother-in-law and what's the mother? She's making room for her. Like both of us are making room for her. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But can I say something though? And the reason I thought that this conversation was an important one to have is because there are certain areas in our lives that we think God doesn't care about. Like there are areas in our life that we are just like, you know what? It's not great, but I'm just going to leave that alone. Like I'm not going to. And I just don't know that that glorifies God. I don't know that that's the kind of life that God has called us to live when we are living for his glory. Everything we're doing for his glory. God cares about the most difficult of relationships. I'm not saying that the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law relationship is that, but I'm saying if in your life that is the relationship, God cares about that. Like you can't just, you know, and God bless the husbands that are involved.
Yes. God bless.
You're like, God bless us, everyone.
I mean, because look.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's a difficult spot to be in.
It is. You know, it's like one of those things you may feel like I'm in the middle. Like, how do I, you know, how do I please both parties? And
okay, listen, hold on a second.
No,
you're not a victim. This felt too good to you. You were like, yeah, because no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Parties, because you know, you have your wife who you have left your father and mother, and you're cleaving to your, you know, your wife. But then you have your mom. You know, it's one of those things where it's like.
I'm sorry. Did you say mom or mommy?
I said your mom.
Oh, okay.
Stop it.
It kind of garbled out a little bit. It went just a little, and I didn't know if you said you have your wife and then you have your mommy.
I didn't say mommy.
Okay, I'm sorry. I could have. It's my headphones. I'll talk to engineering to make sure to get it.
But I'm saying that's something that you have to learn how to navigate. Like that's a very real thing.
It's so true. It's so true. And I was thinking, even as in getting ready for this interview, I was thinking through the reality of, first of all, I want to say this, and I'm not saying this for anyone other than just it's the truth. Mm-hmm. I absolutely love my mother-in-law. Yes. I absolutely love my mother-in-law. And I got to tell you, it took me a few years to really feel like I understood her. Mm-hmm. We are, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. She and I, we're not our relationship, but the dynamic of having different personalities, the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law. Like she and I, your mom and I are very, very different.
Right.
Just like you and I are very different.
Right.
But we have a different relational context that fosters sort of like the searching out and the getting to know and all of that I don't have with your mom. Mm-hmm. And so I just kind of went into our marriage like your parents are my parents. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I mean, from the beginning, I called them mom and dad. Mm-hmm. Like Mr. Addison, what? No, dad, your dad. You know, and I fully embraced that when you and I got married, that I was getting a new family, that I was adding to my family, and I was all in. What I was not prepared for was, even for myself, I will say this, the probably self-imposed, excuse me, fear of judgment. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like that feeling of, okay, she's been at this, whatever this is and whatever stage of life it was, she's been at this longer than I have. So she is judging me. You know what I mean? Like, she is judging the way that I relate to you because she knows you. That's her baby. And she can read your facial expressions better than I can. And she knows what, and so all of these things that go into it, and you know, just that whole dynamic. And then you add children to that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, she's been at this longer than I have, and she has an opinion on what I should probably do or what might be the issue with one of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And my thinking is it could be that or it could not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And like, how do you navigate that when there's not the safety? Because when it's your mom,
mm-hmm.
like if it's your mom, like if it's my mom,
mm-hmm.
I can say, oh, no, Mom, I don't know. I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
No, you know, and it's okay. We don't lose any ground. But when it's your mother-in-law,
mm-hmm.
there's just, it feels like there's so much more that hinges on that,
yeah.
that can cause friction because we don't really know one another. I would say at this point, we do.
And you
but
know,
go ahead.
I was thinking about what we do in the show. We're talking to families, we're talking to, you know, moms, dads, grandparents. And so I'm just thinking about how we always try to encourage, you know, the grandparents, hey, you have a part to play. But
Yes,
that could be,
that's right.
that might be kind of, you know, I'm thinking about it. It might be like, I know I have a part to play, but my daughter-in-law or my son, it's
listen,
like.
When I tell you that we are walking through this life that we're trying to encourage you in,
yeah,
we are here. And
yeah.
so even this understanding of the value of the grandparents' contribution, like it is something that we ourselves, even as we appreciate it, we're navigating that and trying to allow our kids to experience that blessing, mm-hmm. but also maintain, okay, so what's the vision that the Lord has given us for our family? Like, does that fold into what the Lord has convicted us of, you know, like mm-hmm. what's on our heart? And so it's just really difficult, you know, but I will say this, excuse me. One of the things that I feel like really made a difference between your mom and myself was getting to a place where we were really able to be honest with one another,
yeah.
and to really sit down and talk. And I have to say that your mom, who is like you, she's an introvert,
mm-hmm.
she initiated that conversation,
mm-hmm.
and it made such a difference. She said, all right, she goes, you know, I want to talk to you, and this is not going to be easy, you know what I mean? But I want to talk to you. And the conversation was so good, and we actually went through, and this is going to sound exhausting. It wasn't as exhausting as it sounds as I say it, but we went through several instances over the years where we were able to pinpoint where there was just a misunderstanding.
Mm.
Like there were things that we thought the other person was saying
mm-hmm.
or thinking, and it just wasn't the case. There was just a misunderstanding. And one of the things that we walked away with was this understanding that, man, you know, the enemy really wants all of our relationships. Like he doesn't want there to be any healthy relationships in our life. And so we were able to pinpoint that the enemy was attempting to rob us of this relationship. I'll give you one example here. In the area of when your mom would come into town,
mm-hmm.
and her, like she would clean
mm-hmm.
when she came into town. Well, I cleaned before she came into town because that's like an automatic response
mm-hmm.
defense mechanism to make sure that the house looks like nobody lives here and no one eats anything, no one uses a toilet, nobody. Okay, that's what I want it to look like. The moment that Mama sets foot inside this house, okay, like nobody lives here. Now, in the days that follow, then sure, you can start to live here again. but you know, so, but she would get here, and within like, you know, a day or so, she would start cleaning. And so in my mind, I thought she was saying, your home is filthy. That in my mind, like, and so I watch her and I'm thinking, I already cleaned that. Like, that's its clean state. Like, that's it organized. Like, that looks, and so I built up in my mind that she thinks that I'm a horrible housekeeper. And I'm like, oh, you know, like that's a part of like one of my job descriptions. Mm. So in my mind, it felt like failure. Well, in one of our conversations, we were talking about this, she revealed to me that her heart was set whenever she came to visit us, she wanted to do whatever it took to serve us. She just wanted to serve us. And so she said, in my mind, my pastor always taught, wherever you go, you make yourself a blessing. So she, in her mind, was trying to be a blessing. But I perceived that as an attack. Do you see what I'm saying? And how the enemy can cause that to grow and can cause relationships to be strained. That's just one example. And guess what? I know I'm not even alone here. I know that, and some of you are like, oh, that's your example? Wait until I tell you what happened. No, I'm just kidding. Aaron the Addison's American Family Radio. We'll take the break and we'll be right back.
It gives an impetus to share your faith when you think you've got answers to objections that you expect people to bring up.
The American Family Studios video series, Intro to God's Revelation, featuring Dr. Richard Howe, shows how God has revealed himself in nature and his word, and how we can rightly understand what God has said.
These truths are just a part and parcel of the Christian life. It isn't just for the professional clergy.
Learn the fundamentals of how to approach and understand the Bible in an age of skepticism. This 6-week video curriculum is perfect for your Sunday school class or study group, and it can prepare you to give a defense of God's word and how he speaks to us in nature.
Knowing whether and how God communicates is a safeguard against false claims about God communicating.
Intro to God's Revelation, DVDs and workbook are available for purchase at afastore.net or call 877-927-4917. God made his design for marriage and family absolutely clear. Unfortunately, the world listens to Satan and therefore has a totally opposite view.
Your friend who is saying, I encourage my daughter to identify as my son because I want to be loving and accepting Christian, you need to say that is child abuse.
The Marriage Family Life Conference 2023 wants to restore God's plan. July 6th through the 8th at the Cadence Bank Arena and Conference Center in Tupelo, Mississippi. Strengthen your marriage and your family with Dr. Kathy Cook.
So they choose the quality, they keep making the same choice, the ability develops, it becomes a natural part of who they are, it becomes a part of their character, it marks them.
Ryan Baumberger.
We are the ones who care for people after they're born. I mean, when my parents adopt us and throw us in a cage, hey, go fend for yourself.
Go! And many more. The Youth Apologetics track is back as well. The Marriage Family Life Conference 2023 for His glory alone. Register today at marriagefamilylife.net.
Dr. Carl Truman from the American Family Studios documentary, The God Who Speaks.
Typically, what sola scriptura, what scripture alone means for the reformers is this. We accept the church tradition as an authoritative statement of Christian faith and practice as long as it lines up with scripture. That's not the equivalent of the "it's just me and my Bible" attitude that we often find in evangelicalism today. It's we belong to a historic tradition, but we always need to check what the church is teaching in light of scripture. So scripture alone doesn't mean the only book I read is the Bible. Scripture alone means that the Bible is the ultimate principle by which everything the church ever says or does is to be checked.
Visit thegodwhospeaks.org.
This is a re-air of every.
Appreciate the real-time feedback that we get from our listeners through our chat and our online platforms. I really do appreciate that because, you know, one of the things that we really aim to do is to do relevant programming, like to make sure that the topics that we discuss are meeting the needs and answering the questions, at least in a small way, that you have. And so real time during the break to get some feedback from some of our listeners who said, and we haven't even really gotten into the thick of the content today, but to hear from some of our listeners who were saying, yes, that's the issue. Moms-in-laws, we want to help, or moms-in-law, we want to help, and sometimes it's wrongly perceived. And so I think this is going to be such a great conversation, and I think there's going to be a blessing for daughters and moms as we all listen together and glean some wisdom from our sisters who join us. Let me introduce them both. Barbara Rioch and Stacy Rioch are our guests today, and their book is Making Room for Her, Biblical Wisdom for a Healthier Relationship with Your Mother-in-Law or Daughter-in-Law. And this possibly may be one of those really overlooked relationship dynamics that I think really needs a lot of attention for a healthy family, like just a healthy family unit. So let me introduce them both individually, and then we'll kind of get in and get all the scoop on how they handle their arguments. No, I'm just kidding. That's not why we're here. Okay. Barbara Rioch is the author of A Better Than Anything Christmas and is former director of the Children's Division at Bible Study Fellowship International. Her home is in Minneapolis with her husband, Ron. Before that, her role at BSF, Barbara and Ron lived in Cape Town, South Africa, and they taught Bible study fellowship classes there. I also learned by going to both Barbara's website and Stacy's website some other information that I want to ask them about that's not necessarily pertinent to the book, but I just found a little bit fascinating. Stacy Rioch is a pastor's wife. She's a mom of 4 and the author of Wilderness Wanderings, Finding Contentment in the Desert Times of Life. She's written for various ministries, including Desiring God, the Gospel Coalition, and Revive Our Hearts. Stacy and her husband, Ben, live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with their children, and you can find out more about both of them at their websites. Barbara's is barbararioch.com, and the last name is spelled R-E-A-O-C-H, R-E-A-O-C-H, Rioch, and Stacy's website is stacyrioch.com, same spelling. Okay. Just so that everybody understands, stacyrioch.com. Stacy, Barbara, thank you both for joining us. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having us. It's great to be with you.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to attempt to do. I'm going to attempt to maybe call you guys by name so that we kind of can have a little bit of order to the conversation and not have that like me, you, who wants to answer, who wants to respond, if that's okay. Barbara, yeah, I was... Great. See, and I just didn't do it. I'm starting off bad. Okay, Barbara, let's start with you. I was fascinated as I read your longer form bio on your website, and to learn of the work that you've done working with children and learning the importance and the value of discipling in any cultural context, and whatever the obstacles are. Discipleship is something that is so near and dear to our hearts here. So when I read that, your passion, your conviction about discipling children, and how even that conviction was the genesis of books that you've written for your grandchildren, I just found that fascinating. Before we get into the topic today, can you tell our listeners just a little bit about that?
Oh, Vicki, I would love to. Well, it really was when Ron and I were living in Cape Town, South Africa.